So let's go back in time a little. I want to rewind the clock to before the Black Ops 4 community reveal. At this time, I was creating a video discussing a strange inconsistency within the zombie storyline. I'm not going to go too in depth into this inconsistency because this is something I've already discussed on my channel, but in this video, I talk about how within the comic, you can see that Vicitis clearly teleports into the house. You can compare this scene with the same exact scene from the Revelations intro, and it's the house. And then we have the timeline, which very clearly states that Vicitis was teleported to Richtofen's lab under Alcatraz. And I made the whole video just to discuss this inconsistency. There was no grand conclusion or big theory. It was just, hey, this is an odd thing in the zombie storyline. We should start to pay attention to this more. And then you gotta understand that this video was made before the Black Ops 4 community reveal. I was gonna go on vacation, so I'd recorded about 2 weeks worth of videos to schedule upload while I'm away. And while I was away, the Black Ops 4 community reveal happened. This is why I was unable to attend the event. And I was talking to Rad Austin 27 about it prior to it, and one of the things I mentioned to Reed that he should bring up to Jason is this odd inconsistency. So he does bring it up to Jason Blundell and Craig Houston to try to see if he can get them on the record to discuss this odd inconsistency in the storyline. And all they really do is just look at each other and smile, and they don't say any more on the topic, which is interesting. This means that they intentionally left this odd, seemingly inconsistency or seeming plot hole in their story for us to discover, and it was something that must have completely gone under the radar. I mean, it did. As far as I know, I don't think many people have really discussed this before I talked about it on my video earlier. It's funny, even in my video I said maybe when we get a Mob of the Dead remaster, we will get some information on this, and little did I know that we were going to find out about the remake to Mob of the Dead, Blood of the Dead, at the community reveal. So I know the video goes up after the community reveal, but at the time I had no idea Blood of the Dead even existed, or that the name of it would be Blood of the Dead. But because Jason Blundell and Craig Houston had this reaction to it, it makes me want to dive further into this, and I think I might know what's going on. I'm going to attempt to explain this in a way that is as clear as possible. However, I think it's going to get complicated, and it doesn't really make that much conventional sense, but it does in the way the zombie storyline works, where we have fractured universes and many different versions of our characters. It's important to establish that we're going to have multiple versions of Richtofen as well as multiple versions of the Vicitis crew. So even though they might look the same, they're going to be different crews, and I'll try to make it clear when we make the switch. It begins with this page of the comic book. We see Vicitis teleport into the house. Again, it's clearly the house, and just to further solidify that point, we even have Richtofen say that they should be quiet because the kids are asleep upstairs. If this is still confusing as to whether or not we're in Alcatraz, why would the kids be at Alcatraz? It doesn't make sense. They're clearly at the house. They give Richtofen the chronorium, and Richtofen begins to read it. And this is when he comes with his plan, and he's going to go steal the blood vials. He explains to the crew the forces of good and evil and asks them if they want to live. And to do so, they need to trust Richtofen, and he gives them an ultimatum. When he returns, they need to make a decision as to whether or not they want to live, and Richtofen leaves. Now this is when we're going to have a break, and we're going to actually enter a different universe. It's not going to tell you, but we are now in a different timeline, and this is also the same timeline as the comic book. So we have Richtofen returns to the lab under Alcatraz, where he meets Vicitis, arriving from the empty earth with a chronorium. Upon reading the chronorium, Richtofen discovers numerous timelines documenting their fates and learns about the blood vials. He would later write on the page, "I know what I must do. Edward Richtofen." Richtofen enters a rift to acquire the blood of Sal and Finn. After delivering the blood to his younger self and recovering the blood vials belonging to Vicitis, he returns. Vicitis is placed on ice until they're needed next. Remember that in this segment of the timeline, it clearly states that Richtofen returns to the lab where he meets Vicitis, arriving from the empty earth. Now, in the previous page of the comic book, it's very clear that Vicitis goes to the house after arriving from the empty earth with the chronorium. So now we are in two different timelines. We have one timeline in which Vicitis gets the chronorium and goes to the house, and then we have another timeline in which Vicitis goes to Alcatraz. So there are two different timelines happening simultaneously. and now we're going to make the switch within the comic book. So in the comic book, Richtofen gets the rest of the blood from Alcatraz. He then goes to Alcatraz and gets he gets the Vicitis blood, then he gets the Alcatraz blood, then he gives his younger self the blood vials and returns to Alcatraz. He says he's back at this cursed prison. He's not at the house anymore. He goes down the elevator shaft and there is Vicitis. Now, this is a different Vicitis than the one that we saw previously, and this is also a different Richtofen from the one that we saw previously. This is the Richtofen from the timeline universe, not the Richtofen and Vicitis that we saw at the house. So I just want to make that very clear. These are, even though they look alike and pretty much function the same, they're different characters. I know it's weird and confusing, but they still had the same ultimatum of whether or not they want to live, and if they do, they need to go on the pods and be placed on ice. So they crawl into the pods, and then we have, as we see in the timeline, we have the Primus crew return to Mob of the Dead, and here they are now with Richtofen collecting the rest of the blood vials, and then they're gonna go to Garad Krovi. So this is what I think is going on right now. We have two different Vicitis crews. We have one in Dimension 63 at the house who will ultimately die. They are gonna die when Dimension 63 gets destroyed. However, there is a second set of Vicitis crew at the house, and they're still there waiting for Richtofen to return. We don't know what goes on in the rest of that adventure. Remember that there are things that go on and happen beyond the timeline. This wouldn't be the first time we've seen things that don't appear on the timeline. So to me, I think there is a break within the comics where they switch universes and don't tell us. It's a very subtle change that we wouldn't even pick up on until you read the timeline. This would explain why at the community reveal, when Reed brought this up with Craig Huston and Jason Blundell, they turned to themselves and just smiled. It was a very subtle trick that they included within their comic book and their timeline. It was something that they wanted to pull a fast one on us. It was a secret that they've been keeping, and then when Blood of the Dead comes out, or maybe a future map that relates to Vicitis, they pull that card out and go, aha, we tricked you. That Vicitis was dead, they're actually at the house, or something like that. To me, it seems like a secret that Jason Blundell and Craig Huston have kept between themselves, and they are smirking at themselves right now because we're close and we're on the verge of something right now. This to me seems like one of the most important things we can talk about in the story. Anyway, that's going to wrap things up for this video. If you enjoyed it or found it interesting, maybe give it a like, possibly subscribe for more. I'm always covering the zombie storyline, so if you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy the next one. Have a wonderful day, and bye.